let's just start off with the opening question. And I think I may have explained this to you before, but the conversation is started with a prompt. And the prompt is very general and very specific at the same time. So the question is, what's hurting Black men? And we all know that there are a lot of answers to that question, right? And in that sense, it's very broad, but it's that way by intention because I really want every person who I'm talking to have an opportunity to interpret that through their own lived experience and respond to that through any lens that is, relevant and salient and important to you, right? So with that, I will say to you, Michael, from your vantage point, from your lived experience, what's hurting Black men?
I say what's hurting Black men is ourselves and our lack of awareness of who we are. And when it comes to being very, I guess, honest with yourself, that's a difficulty that we all have. So, we have to realize that we're responsible for everything that takes place in our lives and that we have the power to overcome or, set it aside and not do anything about it. So that's a good general start of really how we hurt ourselves, but really getting to know ourselves and understanding some of our faults and having an environment to deal with some of our faults. In many cases, our fault is our pain, is our wounds that we haven't really healed yet. And as a society, we're all, having a tough time, wrapping all that up. So, in a way to, really address why we are not, moving further along as far as self-happiness, self-fulfillment, comes from these things that, has to deal with a lot of our education. Um, and I say that that's probably the number one solution. We have to start having, a unique way to educate our young children to see the world in a certain lens and perspective that allows them to succeed and navigate through this crazy maze. And so we keep giving that, what do they say, offshoring, that oppresses thing as far as our children to, to teachers, to tablets, to gadgets. And, we're going to continue to go backwards until we really, take control of our, education and access to our children.
When I hear, when I think about what you just shared, there's a part of me that interprets it as, oh, it sounds a little bit to me like, just a little bit like, are we blaming the victim when we say, we're our worst enemy, like Black men, or, what's wrong with you is you, fix yourself. It doesn't seem to acknowledge historical oppression, institutionalized racism, and all of the very active assaults on Black men, on the Black community, on the Black psyche, that happen on a day-to-day basis, pervasively, even today. I'm wondering if you would speak to that a little bit.
And that's a good point. It may appear on the surface that it's a blame the victim type of thing. And, do we just strap up of our own boots and, go ahead and forge ahead and I did it, so you should be able to figure out how you did it too. I completely understand that because that's our parents' generation. That's the way they thought as far as, delivering valuable information to us younger males so we can essentially, learn from what they have discovered and, apply new things on top of that. That's something that we weren't given. So I get that point of view. Now, to make a reference in the oppression, and I think you made a really good word, victim. if we continue to see ourselves as victims, then we'll continue to be victimized. So yeah, it is a little bit of like we have to work on ourselves, but we have to figure out that is the we have to create an infrastructure. We have to create a support. We have to create some honesty. We have to create an environment where people can be, authentic and what's the word I want to vulnerable. No, that's not really it. But where people can really open up to themselves and to others. And we've got to start dealing with our pain because our pain is killing us. And so we're not really looking at the solutions. I mean, we're talking about some of the hereditary things. We're talking about our society. We're talking about all of these different things that are just put on top of us. And yes, it is a huge obstacle. It's oppression. It's all that. But, knowing what I know as where I'm at now, I realize that a lot of this is mental enslavement programming. And we have to realize that we are victorious and we're not a victim. I understand what happened with our parents' generation and the lack of really um, giving us some essential tools to navigate through our world. Um, I My generation kind of grew up on the whole idea, hey, we figured it out and we forged ahead, and you guys should be able to figure it out too, without any support or mentorship or, just any of that. Here's some knowledge type of aspects. Yeah, we got those as kids from men, uh, how to be, good men and citizens and how to play sports and all that kind of stuff. We got that, and that was great. But when it came time to really giving us some keys to the house, so to speak, that was kind of like neglected from us. So I understand that. But when I, talk about, um, what's wrong and how do we, it's mostly what can we do to overcome our situation. And that's the answer that I'm focused on. At the same time, realizing that, racism, sexism, all of these things that are obstacles in front of us are really created to to put us in a secondary position. It's designed that way. Granted, but I come from that generation that said, hey, you must be 10 times as better to get half the praise, so to speak. Well, it's a little bit of like, yeah, we have to become better to heal ourselves and to remove some of this pain, because right now the pain is really self self-inflicting, as far as we are doing things that are sabotaging our own success for ourselves. We're having Many of us are having very toxic relationships, especially with the opposite sex, and we're attracting the same type of people into our lives over and over again, and we're not seeing the pattern because we're not getting the tools to realize that we are being mind controlled. These are purposely implanted on our psyche, in our community. And so when I use the term like self-reliance and we have to have knowledge of self, it's that is the solution of truly becoming free, is being honest with ourselves and creating love for ourselves so that we can be ourselves, and being ourselves will solve a lot of our problems. But we need to start creating an infrastructure, a discussion, a community, um, you know all of these things that support that fundamental desire to um, educate ourselves, and educate ourselves on the system, educate ourselves on loving ourselves, but mostly educating ourselves on healing. And until we do that, we're going to continue to do the same thing over and over.
Michael, I love what you just said, and I'm going to circle right back to those points that you just made. I'm going to take a moment to pause and introduce you to my brother. Can you
How you
see?
doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
Good, good.
Is my baby brother Kimani. Kimani is my friend Michael. I was just telling Key a little bit earlier that I've known you. I think Asha was like 6 or something years old when we met.
Yeah, 6 or 7.
6 or 7 years old. So me and Michael go way, way back. Michael he just mentioned a couple of key things that have come up as themes in almost every conversation that we've had so far.
Mm-hmm.
One is the need for self-actualization,
Yeah,
right? That requires that having these kind of conversations, having that level of self-reflection where you're able to be honest with yourself and build on the inner man, work on your weaknesses, develop your strengths. And the other is that need for healing,
yeah,
right? That real need for healing. And that's really, for those reasons, that's why Kimani and I created this project, because we feel like it's a starting point, right? To have these critical conversations and to hear other people talk about their pain, their lived experience, so that brothers can start connecting and saying, wow, man, it's not just me in my job, working in whatever like field you're working in, but it's also that dude who works in a completely different field and has a completely different experience. It's not just me who was born here in the United States, but it's also that dude, who's an immigrant, of African descent who moved here when he was 10 years old, or whatever the story is, right? But just starting to weave these stories together and
mm-hmm.
giving people an opportunity to connect and relate. And you and I think we've talked about this before, like nobody asks men how they feel, and men are constantly they're socialized in a manner to believe that, that to talk about your feelings means that you're less than a man. You're supposed to just stuff it down and deal with it and keep it moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And particularly the Black male. Nobody asks you how you feel because very few people care how you feel. And many people in this society are afraid of how you feel.
Yeah,
They're afraid of the rage that you might have because they know how you've been oppressed, how you've been assaulted, how you've been denied historically. They know that you're under attack and that, that there's got to be some sort of repercussion for that. And they're terrified. So having this platform and giving brothers an opportunity to talk and to share and to experience and to connect, I'm hoping will address those things that you were just discussing.
yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing as far as other people outside of our race is, especially white people, because they feel like there's some hidden aggression that's going to come out and bite them. And it might in certain smaller ways, but most Black men that I talk to aren't overly aggressive as far as towards white people. They just more aggressive towards wanting to make it better for Black people.
Right.
And there's really nothing to be scared about. We're not hoping for the day that we can make white people slaves. You know what I'm saying? We're not hoping for the day that we can surpass them and be greater than them and have all the influence. We're just looking for our equal footing in the conversation and in our lifestyles.
It's such a good point, Kimani, because when I think about it, I've never met one single person, male or female, not one person of African descent, whether they were born here or born abroad, not one person who has ever said, I can't wait until the day we can retaliate.
Yeah.
Not one person. Everybody just wants to live in peace.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be acknowledged and valued and respected and given equity and opportunity. Michael, you're laughing. Do you know people who might have a different?
No, I've never heard that before. It's funny. Oh, I can't wait to retaliate.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Oh God, then people probably think that, but I have never thought that in my life.
Yeah.
It not even crossed my mind like that's what
Yeah.
cool
Yeah.
situation or something like.
I mean, I might go like karma. I know karma has its own law,
Yeah,
and that, that's been really, um, I know that's been a way to kind of, see, um, just see justice prevail over time. And all I do is when I pray, I said, hey, can you just let me see it, see the karma happen, and I can witness it for myself too. And a lot of times I do see it. And so I never wish it. I just want to see it sometimes. But yeah, I never look for retaliation. I'm too busy trying to just, make it. I'm too busy just want to just live in peace and, make it better for my son and future generations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's funny. I remember I saw a video not long ago where this white woman was doing a seminar of some kind on diversity and racism. And the entire audience was white. And she said, if one of you, whoever in this room, would want to trade places with a Black person and live and get the same treatment that Black, have you seen that, Keith?
yeah, I've
You're
seen it.
nodding.
I've heard about that.
The older white lady, right? I forget her
Yeah,
name.
the white lady.
Yeah,
Yeah. I wish
great.
I could remember her name. I saw it so long ago, but she says, if you would want to have that experience and you would want your life to be treated the way that Black people are treated in this country, stand up, or raise your hand or whatever, and not one person. And she said, just by virtue of the fact that not one of you would trade places with a Black person means they're getting a raw deal.
Yeah.
They're being mistreated because you wouldn't want to be treated that way. And it was interesting because it really illuminated like this feeling of white people that they're so afraid that we're going to retaliate is rooted in that, right? Like they're so afraid because they know how badly we've been treated for so long. And they're terrified that we're going to want revenge. But that was the white fear of the civil rights era.
Yeah.
You
And slavery.
That was the white fear of the civil rights era and everything before that came before that. But they were so afraid, like you give them their freedom and oh my God, they're going to come slit our throats. And it's like, there must be a part of you that kind of thinks you deserve that.
I think it's a big part of them that thinks they deserve that.
Yeah.
And that's why they fight so much against it. In all fairness, I haven't met personally many Black people who are like that. I know that there's those crazies in any race and any civilization that say crazy stuff. And me and you had a conversation earlier about that incident in Washington where the Native American guy and the young boy with the MAGA hat had the standoff, and come to find out there was some there was Black Israelites there who were kind of instigating the whole thing by yelling at the boys and stuff and calling them devils and all this other stuff. And it kind of, as much as I sympathize where their anger is coming from, it always kind of sickens me because you're just stepping on your message. You're not accomplishing anything by yelling and screaming at people and telling them that they're nothing and they're devils. And because none of us are devils, none of us are angels. We're all a mix of what we are, humans. You know what I'm saying? And there's no difference in any of us really. So that's one aspect that I know white people see that one person or those two people who do that, and they get so scared that we're all like that. And then any type of passion or any type of veracity in what you're saying, it just turns them off.
Well, I see it as a perfect example of understanding yourself and know thyself.
Yes.
And the reason why I say it is that when you start to encompass that, then you start to see how other people on the outside love to project.
Yeah.
And so what that really was in my mind is that it's almost like that individual projecting their negative qualities onto you when you're in that type of relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and then treating you like you're the bandit and the bad guy. So in this case, this is something that a white person would do if they were in our shoes and they were being mistreated. And when they got their share to, take over, they would throw it in our faces.
Yeah.
And so they project their behavior onto us and then punish us for their self guilt.
Yes.
And so we have become just the object, external expression of their guilt. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
Yeah.
And so when you see that on an individual basis, and especially in a relationship, then you just, first of all, you got to turn around the language. And every time they say I, they mean you. And every time they say you, they mean I. And then so, what's that? The gaslight effect. So you don't absorb, because you can in relationships absorb other people's negativities.
Yeah.
I've seen it all the time. And we have started to see that happen a lot in relationships. So those are one of the things that we need to do as far as just self-awareness and have those type of discussions. So when we are encountered by that dialogue or that mindset, we turn it right back around and have the dialogue and say, hey, this is your behavior. This is not mine.
Yeah.
So we don't absorb it, because we've now absorbed that behavior and we're living out their guilt. And that's how mind control works, and they create this, that we can't really see, but we sure are experiencing this. And they just want to live a guilt-free, pain-free life. And so they continue to put us in this situation so they don't have to feel their emotions.
True.
And
if there's any proof of anybody doing anything like that, heinous acts, and I mean, it's all on their side. It's not on our side.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we just have to address that, and when we look at that in racism, and we take on those values from, in this case, white people or any other part of us is being oppressed. That's where we have to get this out of our system and start looking at who we are as a people, and what are our things that are denying us from having wholesome, true love and interaction. So I don't know.
As you say that, it reminds me of my own experience as far as being a black man and white people being scared of me as soon as I walk in the room. And knowing that and seeing that and experiencing that, and to the point where I get so normalized to it that I project it myself.
Mm.
You see, and I kind of use it to my advantage in certain situations, because I already know it's there and I already know what I'm dealing with. So, okay, well, fine, then that's what you got, Okay, well, I'm the big black guy who just walked in the room, who has the mug on his face, and I'm not taking no shit from you. That's, I find myself doing that. And I also find myself, now that I'm getting older, seeing how wrong that is, and how I'm just, like I was saying before, stepping on my own message and what I really feel and who I am.
Yeah.
And I think a lot more black people need to look into themselves and just be more honest with themselves and drop some of those guards. Because I mean, we do have to have some guards because of society, but you have to know when it's appropriate and when it's not.
Yeah, but see, that's a huge deal. You're absolutely right. We have this kind of like guards, red alert, I'm always over my shoulder type of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's society. That's what they call the matrix, so to speak. But then there's another hidden part of our world that's beyond the spectrum of light that we can see, that's really beautiful, that's loving, that's kind. Yeah. And so we have to, protect ourselves from, our society, this man-made society, but keep ourselves open to a bigger society that's far enriching. And we need to figure out how to do that. How do we keep that balance? Because at the same time, if we're all closed up, protecting yourself, you at the same time could be protecting yourself from your solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, the abundant world that's outside of our spectrum light is there for us.
Yeah.
And we're not really seeing it. So, yeah, that is clear as far as balancing that act, because we all have to protect ourselves and identify, oh, well, this bad boy over here, you know, this is a narcissist. And no, this is how you deal with narcissism. Okay, boom, 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 you know, and so we can use the jab to keep them off me. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, but we don't have to be tense about it, you know? So it's that type of discussion that we need to pass on to each other.
A great example of that is this house that I'm in right now. When we were looking for a place, me, my wife, and my youngest daughter, we pulled up to the house to look at it, and the owner pulled up, and there was a older white guy in a nice brand new BMW. You know what I'm saying? He has this nice dress business suit on, you know, and we walk in the house, and it's a nice house, and right off the bat, it clicked in our head, me and my wife. We both looked at, oh, we're not getting this place.
Mm-hmm.
Right off the bat, because that's what we're used to. And instead of going back into that shell and just shutting the situation down, which sometimes happens, we let ourselves play it out, and we went through the house. And as soon as we got alone, we both looked at each other, like automatically looked at each other and was like, not happening. Not happening. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but let's just keep going, just see what happens. And the guy ended up being, you know, I like you guys. And there's 4 or 5 families that want to move in here who have better credit than you, who have more money than you, but we like your family. So we're gonna give you the place. And that was a perfect example of how I could have shut myself out from an opportunity by playing on those my own fears and other people's fears and letting that influence my life. But luckily, me and my wife are at that age where we're able to self-diagnose in the situation and let it go, you know?
Yeah. And see what happens.
Yes, and see what happens. And lo and behold, you know, we're in a house. We have my family here. You know, I'm able to raise my kids in a single family house now, which I've never had, you know, and it's a wonderful thing.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that, what you were talking about too, Kimani, when you were saying about sort of this self-fulfilling prophecy and catching yourself and being aware of how you were allowing people's assumptions and expectations of you to start shaping your character and your persona and how you're carrying yourself in any space that you entered, and even using that to your advantage. And I think the fact that you came to a place where you said, man, this isn't in my best interest, you know, and even if there may have been some perks associated with it, you're like, I'm letting this go. It's not in my long-term best interest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not being true to myself. And I think that really connects in with what Michael was saying about, and what we've been saying in previous conversations about self-realization, right? When you get to that place where you're no longer looking at yourself through your worldly persona and all of the stuff that gets layered on top of us and the things that we're taught. This is how we're supposed to be. This is what a man is. This is what it means to be Black. And all of a sudden, you just see yourself as human.
Yeah.
And I want to say that that's really like the ultimate transformation, right? That is reaching that peak of the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I want to say that, in my opinion, I think Malcolm X has always been like the premier example of that in the Black community. This is someone who started off running the streets, right? Thugging and being on the wrong side of the law. He went from that to a whole different stage of evolution when he became a man of faith and a leader of the Black movement and a man of like political and social consciousness. All of a sudden, he was living for something so much bigger than himself. But then when he went to Mecca, is when he really transformed. When he was like, wow, it's not even about my racial identity, my religious identity, my national identity, all of these different identities that are imposed upon us. It was just about being a human being. And he
Yeah.
came into the fullness of himself as just his own personal humanity. And I think that's kind of what you guys have been talking about too, right? It's just having that ability or that level of self-awareness and that opportunity, to transform and to elevate to that level of self-awareness. Bringing that back again to, the hierarchy of needs, right? If at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are those basic things like food, housing, family, community, all of those things. And when you look at the condition of a lot of people, people of color, Black people here in the United States and around the world, more than any other population of people on the planet, we are the ones who don't even have those things at the base of the hierarchy, the base of the pyramid. That's why it's such a struggle to get to the top, to that point of self-realization. When you're still hustling for the basics, you don't have the time or the luxury to say, oh, I'm going to be self-reflective and think about, these lofty ideals or principles or, that kind of thing. I don't have time to meditate. I got to hustle to pay the rent, that kind of thing. And that's why I, when I hear people say, how important it is, I'm like, yes, it is. And at the same, it is important to be self-reflective. It is important to heal. It is important, but how are we going to help facilitate that for individuals who are still struggling with the basics, right? And I guess I want to use this to sort of segue into the two follow-up questions to our primary prompt. And so our primary prompt is what's hurting Black men, and then the two supporting questions are, what can we do about it? And what can be done about it? And what can we as individuals do? And so I'm just wondering, Michael, if you have some thoughts, like on a larger social societal level, what can be done to help facilitate the healing and the advancement of Black men? And what can we as individuals, like you and me, starting tomorrow, what can we do?
Great question. So you mentioned survival, and how there's so many portions of our world where people of color are just living day-to-day survival, and that's purposely being done. There's a lot that happens to our bodies, and a lot happens to our minds when we're constantly in the survival mode, in that flight or flight mentality. One, our body does not digest food. It's not getting enough nutrients and oxygen to the brain because it's always in the red alert and getting the adrenaline and all that kind of stuff. Our frontal lobe, where our idea, just intelligence and ability to critically think is being removed. So yeah, the survival thing really creates kind of like the monster within, because if you're constantly in that arena, you have these adrenaline and these hormones that are constantly being produced that are going against how your body distributes energy. Yeah, there's no way in the world that you can make any assessment, critical thinking, or anything that'll help you in your long-term, well-being.
Yeah.
So that's a key mark. And that's why we're seeing a lot more this in our society, not just with Black people, but overall in many of our portions of society, especially as we all dealing with this housing issue out here in California. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up the survival thing. Now, the interesting thing is that from my perspective, the answer is, okay, how can we train our minds to let our bodies know that, okay, we have to get out of survival in order for us to survive? And that's where the trick comes in. How I'll just go by this. There's a lady, and this is where it really came as like a sign from the Most High. She was saying that she was homeless, and she said that she started to breathe, and the breathing changed her life and helped her get out of homelessness. And she, in her story, she talked about the different things she went through. And all I can do with the answer is that we have to start understanding that getting out of that survival mode is the key.
Yeah.
Because you can't get anything done unless you take yourself out of there. And a lot of the things that we're being placed upon our survival mode are external circumstances. Now, I'm not here to say that the external circumstances aren't real and they're not like weighing down on who we are in our psyche. What I am saying is that there is the ability to our mindset to change that perspective and start to see somehow the positives in that and make a change. But you know, to most people that's just a theory. But the fact is that when you're in survival mode, you can't think well, you're not digesting food well, and your energy is being depleted because it's always in that red alert adrenaline space. So that's the first thing that we have to do. And we've got to figure out how do we do that under these conditions when we're just trying to find a decent place to live, when we're just trying to, raise our families, find childcare. We're just trying to do the basics.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to think about. And I mean, I think I can apply part of the answer to the problem, but it takes a community to realize how do we support each other and come together when we're all facing the same circumstances. And that's the only solution that can really allow us to really make some difference, is that we've got to come together and we're so far apart.
Yeah. The perfect example of that to me is I have a friend who my closest friend, and I try to talk to him sometimes about politics or, how we're gonna make our lives better as Black men. And we're both financially in the same position. We're both struggling and in survival mode as far as that goes. But he shuts every other possibility out as far as trying to better his circumstances politically or being an activist, because he's like, I don't want to hear that. As long as I can get me a job or I can get some money, I don't want to hear none of that. And I don't care who's president, I don't care who's in Congress, I don't care who's in anything. I just need, as long as I can get some money, that's all I care about. And I try to have those conversations with him. And I think that's one thing that we need to do as Black men more, is the people who see the bigger picture and can try to get out of that mind state and better ourselves, to keep talking to those that don't, who shut it out and don't want to deal with it because they're like, well, I just have to get my food. My daughters have to get to school. My son has to play basketball or whatever, whatever the circumstance is, I think that's the best way for us to be able to try to impart that and build the community up as a whole.
Michael, you mentioned this woman who got herself out of homelessness with breathing, and I know that you have some training and some expertise around breathing and about shifting mindsets. I wonder if you feel comfortable elaborating on that a little bit, if you're proposing that people get out of the fight or flight response zone and get out of the mindset of constantly being in survival mode, even if their circumstances are that they are still struggling for their survival. It's about changing the mindset around it. How do people do that? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I will share my breathing experience. It was when Jackson was born. Jackson will be 3 this month. And I was dirt poor. I didn't know how I was going to pay for diapers. Later on, I ended up being homeless, not homeless to what everybody would experience on the street, but I didn't have a place to stay. And I was staying with my mother, and I was staying with my friend and I went to college with. And, I had that experience for about 6 months. I didn't have a car. I was dealing with court issues with Jackson and some other, civil issues. So it was just caving in on me from every single direction. And all I could tell myself at that time was, every time I feel anxious, every time I feel stressed, time I feel like I can't overcome, I'm just going to take a deep breath. And I'm just going, because I always hear that we don't really take deep breaths, we shallow our breaths. So I'm going to do the opposite. And I started to just practice that. And not only did I feel immediate relief and sanctuary, along with I was listening to a lot of music, and I was really controlling the things that was entering my mind or my portals. I had turned off my cable. And so I was really, concerned about all the inputs. And so, anyways, not only did I get immediate feeling and rejuvenation, but I started to accomplish things. I started to get things done, and things started to turn into my favor. And so by the end of the year, something that looked terrible and I don't know how I was going to get out of, transformed. And it started with breathing. And so that was year one of really applying, breathing into my life. And since then, I've, done almost a documentary where I've like, okay, well, let's keep it going. Let's see what else I can do. And so to summarize what I've discovered, um, you know, the philosophy of Breathe Infinity is based upon stagnation and density. And so when our bodies are stagnant and when we're holding on to energy and a lot of our emotions that we're denying and we're not realizing, and as men and women, but mostly men, how we're just trapping inside of our body, that's creating stagnation. It's preventing things from moving accordingly. And so what breathing does, it's kind of like you're going to go out and dig in the dirt over the next couple of the days. Well, before you dig in the dirt, you're going to want to water that dirt because you don't want to dig in that hot, rock hard dirt. You want to kind of loosen it up a little bit. And so the breathing allows you to, get some of those inner um, traumatic emotions and start, kind of uprooting them. Now it's going to take you to do some inner work, and it's also going to take some exercise as well, just movement, because we need to move. Our bodies need to move. And right now we're sitting down all day. We're getting sedentary, death syndrome. This is coming part of our daily lives, and this is happening. We don't even know it. So, anyways, it's about movement and it's about circulation. And so breathing is the start to that. And so what has happened to me is um, I've had I've had some posture issues, and I had some posture issues when I ran track, and I've had some um, core issues when my core wasn't as strong as I would like for it to have been, or I would like for it to be. And so, ironically, just by me focusing on breathing and getting in the deepest breath and relaxing myself, especially at adverse situations, my body started to self-correct itself just by, sending me sensations. Oh, you got this little tension going on over here. I need you to move like this. Get it out of your system. And the next thing I know is that my posture is different and my core is stronger. And I didn't focus on that at all. So there's a lot of things I've learned from my breathing journey. And I just want to encourage people to start their own breathing journey and see how it transforms their lives.
Yeah, I I can attest to that. Right before the holiday season this year, I had a few jobs. I'm a carpenter. That's how I pay my bills mostly. I'm a carpenter, and I had a few jobs that got pushed back, and I couldn't find any work all the way through the holidays, all the way into February. And and I've had ups and downs, obviously, throughout my life, and usually I stress. I'm walking back and forth, going through my phone. Who can I call? What can I do? What can I do? Oh my God. Like, you know what I'm saying? I have wife, I got 3 kids. I got bills. Oh my God. You know what I'm saying? And for some reason, noticing that over the years, this last time, which was the longest time that I've been without work and really stressing and bills adding up and things getting turned off in about 15 years. Through that process, I realized that whenever I got to that point where I was like, oh my God, you know, the body's tensing and everything, I would just lay down. I'd breathe, like you said, and I was okay, this will pass. At some point, I will be through this. I need to just ease my mind. I need to calm my mind so I can think straight, so I'm making the right decisions. And at some point, the work will be here, and I'll be able to get out of this hole, and everything's will be fine. And breathing was the way for me to be able to do that. So it really did come in handy. I know my blood pressure would have been through the roof if it wasn't. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Michael, you mentioned the term breathe infinity. What is that? What is that?
Well, Breathe Affinity is the curriculum, the online curriculum that I've developed that'll introduce you on breathing techniques. I've discovered a breathing technique, and it's focused on relaxing, you know, because we're contracting a lot of muscles. And so we're not going to be able to get in air and oxygen into our system until we start relaxing. So it's a relaxation process, along with re-educating us on how to take deep breathing. Because many of us are breathing through our chest, and we're raising our shoulders, and we're creating tension in our necks, and that's not the proper way to, you know, breathe. And I've actually had over hundreds of conversations, and I've only had 2 people that actually had a proper breathing for their diaphragm. So, you know, Breathe Infinity is a curriculum um, to help us develop the technique of sensation and feeling and relaxation, so that we can generate oxygen, maximum oxygen into our system, and feed our brain, because our brain takes 23% of the oxygen that we bring into our bodies, and get things moving and circulating. And so I teach it online. I also have personal training sessions, and I'll be having a retreat workshop this summer solstice. So it's basically 15 years of research, but the last 3 years have been really breakthroughs, and I'm just sharing my breakthroughs. And there's some things about stress that we're not aware of. There's some things, and I know you like to dance a lot too. Uh, and we don't even dance as a community anymore. And dancing is so freedom with our hips, and it's a soulful, enriching experience that our bodies naturally find a way to release the toxins and all the things that are building up. And so that's another thing that we have to educate ourselves on. We have all this buildup, we're holding so much inside, and we have to start releasing it. And that's what Breathe Infinity is about.
Yeah.
So tying that back to our primary topic, right, which is, you know, what is hurting Black men and what can we do about it? What I'm hearing from you is that, like, through breathing exercises, it seems like relaxation, release, mindfulness ties into the healing that we need in our community. And so through the breathing, it's a way of having like some deep emotional healing and release, right? So that we can start thinking clearer, thinking on a higher level, making better decisions, and having more energy to take care of those things that, you know, that the demands that we have in our lives, which is like meeting all of those basic human needs like food and shelter, and trying to advance ourselves and that sort of thing. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know a lot of people, you know, smoke weed or drink or do certain drugs to try to lessen their stress levels, but usually those things just exacerbate the situation if you really pay attention. You know, I smoke a lot of weed myself, and when I'm stressed out, first thing I want to do is go light up a joint. You
Mm-hmm.
know? So in my mind, I feel like I'm relaxing, but then
Well,
some
you
you
are relaxing.
you are relaxing, but you still holding on to whatever it is that's stressing you out.
It's not going away.
It's not going away. It's helping me deal with it a little bit more, but at the same time, like you're saying, like the only thing that really does it is when I realize, okay, I'm like really tense right now. Okay, relax. I'm breathing from my chest. Okay, breathe from my diaphragm, and that's when the feeling actually starts subsiding. You know, and that's something that I've noticed about myself, and I'm sure most people are like that. You know.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's a real distinction between relaxing and releasing,
Yeah.
is what you're
Mm.
saying, right?
Mm.
So you can smoke weed and you can relax, but you're not actually releasing. So you're not solving any problems. You're just giving yourself a temporary respite.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's from that deep breathing that actually helps you to release.
Yeah.
And that from the release is where the healing comes.
Yeah.
Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, yes.
Am I getting
That's
it
where
right?
that's where the stress relief and the clear thought process comes from. A friend of
That-
mine, he smokes a lot of weed, and he'll be like, "I'm stressed out. I smoke," and then he smokes, and then he gets anxiety, and he's like, "Oh, I got anxiety. I need to smoke some more," and he smokes some more, and it's like it at some point it doesn't help you. You know, it's good to be able to take your mind into a new thought process, but you have to have your body follow it, you know?
yes.
And that's where I feel like breathing comes in so effectively.
So,
Yeah,
Michael, in your 15 years of research, did that include like studying the Eastern yogis in like Hinduism and India?
no, it started with more of a self-reflection on me. It actually started with me by watching football, and I was noticing how tense I was watching football, and what areas of my body was tense, and I knew it was very unnatural. And me being an athlete, I going, hey, it's something wrong when there's a certain part of my body that's always contracting.
Yeah.
Muscles don't grow if they're constantly contracting. They need a balance of contraction and relaxation. And I said, well, let me just start trying to relax this part of my body. And I noticed that, wow, man, I'm constantly always tense there. And so that was my first discovery. And, and then from there, finding ways to relax myself. And when life just threw the big hurdle on me, and the weight just seemed like it was overbearing, it really forced me to maybe apply all the things that I had known at that time. And as I started to do that, I started to, get the solutions that I needed to these problems. And then people would show up in my life. And I just had to basically surrender and say, oh, okay, yeah, help me. And I want help. And things would start to fall in line, and I'd start to have hope. Oh, man, maybe I can get this thing done. Well, instead of just, as you were doing earlier, just going through the motions of getting the house. And it's like, well, I'm going to at least going to play my hand out. I'm not going to just give up and put the cards down and say I give, you know. And with that in mind, about moving forward there and allowing the journey to take place, that's where the research came from. And then I started to do the research, what I had discovered, and go online. And then I started to see how was line up with some Eastern traditional methods. And people would bring information to me and say, "Oh, this is like that." I go, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that." So no, it was all self-discovery, and it's essentially my spirit guiding me.
Yeah, that's how I do. I should do more learning and have more curiosity towards other techniques, but mainly throughout my life it's been, self-discovery. It's trying to be aware of myself
Yeah,
and how I fit in my surroundings.
but
What do you
I did have outside help too. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, people would come into my lives,
Hmm.
and then they would give me like little pointers. And in some cases, I would take it all the way through. In some cases, I would not, and I would maybe put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I start putting things on the shelf, it would come back and it would weigh a lot more later on. So it became that pattern of like, okay, I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to release. And the thing I tell myself almost every day, surrender and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think learning from your own experience, having that level of self-reflection, being able to identify patterns and connect the dots and come to, certain realizations and conclusions. I think that's organic learning, right? I mean, isn't that where it all begins? Even if you were to study these yogis from India, at some point, somebody just learned this from studying themselves, So it's like if you can do it on your own without having, to consult with anyone else, it's even richer. It's even better. But it just struck me because I first learned about breathing through those Eastern, philosophies and teachings. And it was my mother who had discovered it first and then shared it with me. And I remember, I don't know, I was pretty young. I was probably in my late teens, when my mom first introduced that to me. And I remember thinking, can breathing really be that powerful? Is there really that much in the breath? But there was this one yogi that my mom was fascinated with, named Krishnamurti. And he would talk about the power of breath and the power of breathing. And that's where I first learned about meditation. So hearing you, and the things that you're saying, I'm like, you discovered through your own natural processes something that has been established, like for thousands of years. It's like this ancient wisdom, and you happened upon it in the most natural, organic, personal way. And I just think that's really impressive, both of you guys.
If you think about it, I mean, breath is life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's it's the most basic of needs.
Yeah.
It is. It is. So we talk about survival,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe our life is a reflection of, maybe the air that we're allowing into our lives.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Ooh, that's deep, Mike.
It's really
That's
deep.
deep. Even in the Judeo-Christian tradition, they talk about the ruach. The ruach is the breath of life. It's the breath of God. It's the breath that he breathed into the nostrils of clay that created Adam, and it's the breath that animates all of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
You said that well. You got those little pronunciations down in that.
You know what? I'm thinking it.
That's
I'm
the Jewish.
thinking it. I'm sure that somebody who actually speaks through it.
No, you were pretty good. You've done that 3 times. I go, wow, she said that word really good.
Thank you, though. So, wow, I feel really good about this conversation. It's taken us in a very different direction than some of the other conversations that we've had. And that's one of the things that I think I've really been looking forward to with starting this project, is being able to represent a lot of different perspectives on the Black experience and a lot of different solutions, right, that are coming from us, and rather than from people who are studying us from the outside. And I just really want to thank you for bringing such a unique perspective, and sharing that with us. It's
No,
really
thank you for the conversation. Thank
so.
you. And I'm so glad I met your brother, man. It was great.
All right, have a great night. Give Jackson a big hug for me.
I will. Thank you. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right,
All
see you
right.
later.
Bye.
All right.